This story is very meaningful. Everyone should hear it. Listen to Brian tell the story. I never imagined my life would turn into this. I thought I had a solid marriage, a loving wife, and a baby on the way, a future I had been looking forward to. But everything came crashing down the moment I glanced at her phone. She had left it on the kitchen counter, an unusual thing for her. Normally, she carried it everywhere, almost like it was an extension of her hand. I wasn't suspicious at first, but something inside me whispered that I should take a look. Maybe it was the way she had been acting lately, the way she'd become obsessed with the gym, the way she'd started coming home late, too exhausted to even hold a conversation with me. I wish I had ignored that whisper. I wish I had never picked up that phone. Her messages were still open. A conversation with a name I recognized but never thought twice about. Jake. I had heard her mention him a few times. Some guy from the gym? Friendly, she had said. Harmless. But the words on the screen told a different story. Can't wait to see you tonight. I've been thinking about you all day. You make me feel so alive. I wish I could stay in your arms forever. I need you. I felt my stomach twist. My hands clenched the phone so tightly I thought I might crack it. My pregnant wife, the woman I had been planning my future with, was in love with another man. I scrolled further, my heart pounding against my ribs. The text got worse. Descriptions of their nights together, how much she craved him, how she had been sneaking off to see him between workouts. I dropped the phone onto the counter like it had burned me. When she walked back into the kitchen and saw my face, she knew. Why are you looking at my phone? She demanded, but her voice trembled. You lied to me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It's not what you think, she started, but I had already seen enough. Rage boiled up inside me, an uncontrollable fire I had no way to put out. Before I knew what I was doing, I slammed her phone onto the ground. The screen shattered, the sound of breaking glass slicing through the silence. She gasped. Then, without hesitation, she hit me. A hard slap to my back, followed by another to my arm. You have no right, she screamed. No right? I turned to face her, my body shaking. I'm your husband, Emily, and you've been fucking someone else. She didn't deny it. She just stared at me, her face pale. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered. I swear. How long? I asked, my voice dangerously low. She swallowed hard. Since last summer. I let out a bitter laugh. Almost a year. My wife had been sneaking around with another man for nearly a year. And then the worst question formed in my mind. One that I didn't want to ask but had to. The baby, I said slowly, my throat dry. Is it mine? Her breath hitched. I think so. I stared at her, trying to understand how this had become my reality. You think so? I repeated. He always used protection, she blurted out. But you don't know for sure. Her silence was the only answer I needed. I turned away from her, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch something. Instead, I walked out the door, slamming it shut behind me. I spent the night at my brother's house, sitting in silence as he and his wife processed what I had just told them. I knew something was off, my sister-in-law said, shaking her head. She was at the gym too much. And the way she talked about it, it was like she had a whole other life there. My brother sat beside me, his hands clasped together. What are you gonna do? I exhaled sharply. I don't know, but I'm not raising another man's kid. Win. The next morning I went home. Emily was curled up in bed, her eyes swollen from crying. You came back, she murmured. We need to talk, I said, standing stiffly in the doorway. She nodded, sitting up slowly. I'll take a DNA test, she whispered, if it'll make you stay. I scoffed. It's not about staying, Emily. It's about the truth. She nodded, looking down at her hands. Do you love him? I asked. She hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. I don't know, she finally said. If you have to think about it, that's already an answer. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I didn't want to hurt you. But you did, I said, my voice cold. She looked at me like she wanted to beg for forgiveness, but I wasn't interested in hearing it. I'll get the test, I said. After that, we'll talk about what happens next. A week later, the results came in. I was the father. The relief was short-lived, though, because by then Emily had already made up her mind. She moved in with Jake. He loves me, she had said, as if that justified everything. He's a fucking home wrecker, I spat. She didn't argue. She just packed a few things and left, leaving the rest of her belongings behind. I thought that would be the end of it. But then, a month later, she called me. He wants a paternity test, she admitted. I laughed bitterly. So when I asked for one, you refused. But when he asks, you do it immediately? It's not like that, she said quietly. But it was exactly like that. And when the results confirmed what we already knew, that I was the father, she texted me again. I'm glad it's yours, she wrote. I know you'll be a great dad. As if that made things any better. As if that changed anything. Months passed. She stayed with Jake, but cracks started forming. He doesn't treat me the way you did, she admitted one night when she came by to pick up more of her things. He doesn't do the little things. Oh, I said, uninterested. He's selfish. He only cares about himself. I leaned against the doorway, smirking. Sounds like you made the right choice then. She looked down, biting her lip. I miss us. Too bad, I said, and shut the door in her face. The day our baby was born, I was there. Jake wasn't. She tried to act like everything could be okay between us, but I wasn't playing that game. She had made her choice, and now she had to live with it. But me, I was free. Days passed, weeks. I tried to focus on work, on preparing for fatherhood, but the bitterness never left me. It was a dull ache in my chest, a wound that refused to heal. Emily sent texts sometimes, mostly about the baby. I answered, but only in short responses. She wanted to act like we could co-parent amicably, but every time I heard her voice, all I could think about was her betrayal. Then one night she called me, her voice frantic. He's gone, she said. I frowned. What are you talking about? Jake, she sobbed. He left. He packed his things and just walked out. I should have felt satisfied. I should have enjoyed the fact that her perfect little fantasy had crumbled. But instead, all I felt was exhaustion. Not my problem, I said, about to hang up. I don't know what to do, she choked out. I'm due in a month. I have no one. I hesitated. A part of me, the part that had once loved her, wanted to tell her she could come back, that I would take care of everything. But the rational part of me knew better. You should have thought about that before you threw everything away, I said coldly. Figure it out, Emily. And I hung up. Chapter. She started calling more often after that. At first, it was just about the baby, asking if I could come to doctor's appointments with her now that Jake was gone. Then it became personal. I miss you, she admitted one night. I miss us. Us? I scoffed. There is no us, Emily. Not anymore. I was stupid, she whispered. I don't know what I was thinking. I ruined everything. Yeah, I said, my voice hard. You did. Silence stretched between us. Do you think you'll ever forgive me? She finally asked. I sighed, rubbing my temples. Maybe, someday, but forgiveness doesn't mean going back. She didn't respond, just breathed shakily on the other end of the line before whispering, good night. The night she went into labor, she called me first. It's happening, she said, panic lacing her voice. Please, please come. I hesitated for only a second before grabbing my keys. When I arrived at the hospital, she was already in a gown, sweating, crying, gripping the railing of the bed. She looked up at me with weird desperation. You came, she gasped. I told you I would. Hours passed. She screamed, she sobbed, and I stayed. And when our son was born, when I saw his tiny hands, heard his first cry, something inside me broke. He was mine. No matter what happened between Emily and me, this little boy was mine. When the nurses handed him to her, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. He's perfect, she whispered. I swallowed hard. Yeah, he is. After my birth, things got complicated. Emily wanted to come back home. We can be a family, she pleaded. I'll do anything to fix this. But I couldn't. You don't get to break me and then decide when I should put myself back together, I told her. You made your choice. Now live with it. She cried, she begged, but I stood firm. I would always be there for my son, but for her, never again. The final nail in the coffin came a few months later. I was picking up my son for the weekend when I noticed something different. Emily was acting distant. "What's wrong?" I asked. She hesitated before blurting out, "Jake's back." My entire body tensed. "Excuse me?" "He came back," she repeated, not meeting my eyes. "He wants to try again." I let out a hollow laugh. "And what do you want?" She swallowed hard. "I don't know." "Bullshit." I stepped closer. "After everything? After you begged me to take you back? And now you're thinking about him again?" "It's not like that," she whispered. "Then what is it like, Emily?" My voice was sharp, filled with barely controlled rage. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're about to make the same goddamn mistake twice." She had no response. I scoffed, shaking my head. "You really are something else." I picked up my son's car seat and walked toward the door. "I'll see you Sunday," I said over my shoulder. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt truly free. Weeks turned into months, and I found myself settling into a new rhythm. Being a single father wasn't easy, but it was the one thing in my life that felt right. My son, the only good thing to come out of this mess, was growing fast. Every time I held him, every time he wrapped his tiny fingers around mine, I knew I would never let anything break me again. Emily, on the other hand, was falling apart. Jake didn't stay. Of course he didn't. Once the excitement, the thrill of stealing another man's wife had faded, he lost interest. He left again, this time for good. And just like that, Emily was alone. She tried reaching out more, tried finding excuses to talk to me, but I didn't entertain it. She had made her choices, and I was done being her safety net. I gave her the respect she deserved as the mother of my child, but nothing more. One day she showed up at my place looking tired, lost. She stood on my porch, holding our son, her eyes red from crying. "I don't know who I am anymore," she admitted. "I lost everything." I took my son from her arms, kissing the top of his head. "No, Emily, you threw everything away." Her face crumpled. "Do you think there's any chance at all, that we could fix this?" I didn't even have to think about it. "No." A sob escaped her lips, but I didn't feel sorry for her. She had chosen excitement over stability. She had gambled everything we had, and she lost. She left without another word. That was the last time she ever asked for another chance. Life went on. I focused on my son, on my work, on building something new for myself. And slowly, the weight of the past lifted. Sometimes I still saw her. At drop-offs, at pickups, in the occasional text about our son. She always looked at me like she wanted to say something, like she regretted every decision she had ever made. But it didn't matter anymore. I was free. She wasn't. And that was enough. Months passed and life slowly found its balance. Raising my son alone wasn't easy, but it was rewarding in a way I never expected. Every late night feeding, every first word, every sleepy smile reminded me that, despite everything, I had something truly special. I had him. Emily, on the other hand, struggled. Jake had left her for good. She had lost more than just our marriage. She had lost stability, trust, and the sense of home we had built together. For a long time, I kept my distance. I didn't owe her anything beyond being civil for the sake of our son. But something changed one evening when she called me, her voice raw and exhausted. "I need help," she admitted. Those words hit differently than her past attempts to reconnect. This wasn't another plea for forgiveness. It wasn't an excuse or an attempt to rewrite history. It was real. So for the first time in a long time, I listened. We started small. I let her have more time with our son, encouraged her when she tried to rebuild her life. She started therapy. She apologized, not with empty words, but with actions. She didn't ask for us to be together again. Instead, she worked to become a better person, a better mother. One day, as we sat across from each other at a coffee shop after dropping our son off at daycare, she looked at me with tearful eyes. "I know I don't deserve it," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "But I hope someday you can forgive me." For the first time, I realized I already had. Forgiving her didn't mean forgetting. It didn't mean we would ever be what we were before. But it meant letting go of the anger that had weighed me down for so long. We became something unexpected, co-parents who respected each other. She found herself again, and so did I. Life moved forward, and though we had taken different paths, we had found a way to walk alongside each other for the sake of our son. In the end, love isn't just about romance. Sometimes it's about understanding, about choosing to grow instead of letting pain define you. Mistakes shape us, but they don't have to destroy us. What do you think? Do people deserve a chance at redemption? Let me know in the comments.